Hello and welcome to this News9 special. The ties between India and Canada has been nosediving. Now, there is only one reason for it, and it is the question of Khalistan. Khalistani elements have been infiltrating Canada's institutions and at the same time has a huge influence when it comes to its current government. And right now, Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister of Canada, has in fact raised the stakes. He has said that Indian agents were allegedly behind the killing of Niger, who is a Khalistani terrorist and sympathizer. At the same time, Niger had openly called for attacks on India, and we have been actually looking at how Khalistan is technically being reborn in certain aspects when it comes to the foreign diaspora as well. Before, in fact, going ahead and discussing about it, in the studio we also have Deepak Bandana, who will join us and also speak about how the impact of this is. But in News9 Plus, we have a series of documentaries on Khalistan. Let me bring you the first part of it. With the mob lynchings and growing terror crime nexus and the resurgence of radical separatist movements, Punjab is on the edge again. But to understand what's happening today, one must revisit the past and the state's history of violence. Let's take a look at this News9 Plus documentary first and then have an understanding of what exactly was happening when it came to the Khalistani aspect.
On 23rd February 2023, supporters of Waris Punjab De Head by Amritpal Singh stormed a police station in Ajnala on the outskirts of Amritsar, Punjab. Carrying the holy Guru Granth Sahib and armed with swords and guns, the mob demanded the release of a man accused of kidnapping and assault. And Punjab surrendered. This is but the latest series of disturbing incidents that include RPGs being fired at police establishments and drones ferrying drugs and weapons into the state on a daily basis. Punjab has become a powder keg, and now the Frankenstein of Khalistan re-emerges. The questions today are both troubling and numerous. How did Punjab come to this state of lawlessness? Is this the rebirth of the Khalistani movement? And is Punjab doomed to relive a bloody past?
Hi, I'm Ajay Sahni. I'm the Executive Director of the Institute for Conflict Management and the South Asia Terrorism Portal. We focus on terrorism, insurgency, or widespread movements of violence in the South Asia region, and we have among the largest databases in the world on the subject.
At least 2 to 3 years ago, Khalistani elements threatened me as well while I was reporting on Khalistan, and two of my senior colleagues in media were called by Khalistani elements from USA, and they threatened him, saying that if Aditya Raj Kaul doesn't change his stance and reportage, then they will teach me a lesson. I've been covering the Khalistan movement for at least last 8 to 10 years, and I've been mostly tracking Khalistani groups like Babbar Khalsa, Sikhs for Justice, and the Pakistani ISI K2's support to these Khalistani elements. Hi, I'm Aditya Raj Kaul, Executive Editor, Strategic Affairs and National Security News9 Plus, and I'm here to speak about Punjab. Punjab today resounds with an ominous call. Fostered by dissatisfaction, funded by foreign actors, and supported by some rogue elements. Khalistan has coming back to haunt Punjab. But to understand what's happening today, you need to go back to the past. Khalistan aims to establish Sikh rule, a state that is completely ruled by the Sikhs, for the Sikhs, and is of the Sikhs. It does not have the Indian or the Pakistani constitution. It comprises of the Punjab in India and Pakistan, and with Lahore as its main capital.
You see, the idea of Khalistan goes back into the, it was really created by the diaspora community in America, goes back to the late 70s, 76, I think a big advertisement came out in the New York Times about declaration of Khalistan kind of thing. But it was not much of a, it did not get much traction for many, many years. Then you had, of course, the, I would say, state-sponsored rise of journalists in Bhindranwale, who again did not speak of Khalistan at all. However, he did engage in a number of, a whole succession of terrorist actions, an extreme radicalization of the community, of the Sikh community.
But the real killings actually start from 83. The first selective killings of Hindus happened in, it's called the Dhilwa bus massacre. So where they take 6 Hindus out of the bus and slaughter them on Bhindranwale's direct instruction, and that leads to president rule in Punjab.
The sheer shock in those days, the complete collapse of policing, sense of fear, because you see this was not a state. The state police was a civil police. It had never encountered something like this. So they were abruptly thrown into a pattern of conflict, which they were completely unprepared for. And you had absolute collapse of all police process, of all police forces. In fact, whenever a terrorist incident would occur, they would not even investigate. They would not take names. Almost every incident of terrorism in that period was unidentified miscreants, unidentified assailants. So that was the situation pre-Blue Star. After Blue Star, when you had, 1,000, 1,500, 1,600, 2,000 killings in some of the years, the pall of fear was enveloping. I mean, anyone who lived in Punjab or traveled through Punjab in those days will tell you that you could go miles on the highways without seeing another. And there was this common saying that the daytime belongs to the police and the nighttime belongs to the Khadpurs, the terrorists. So that was the environment of Punjab.
Well, all through 83 till about 87, 88, there was continuous violence on the streets of Punjab. One reason for this was the Gurdwaras, where the Khalistani elements had taken shelter. There were various Gurdwaras all across Punjab. Not only had they taken shelter, but they had taken their entire cache of ammunition, guns and pistols, and perhaps grenades as well. And they were launching these small-scale attacks on civilians and security forces from inside those Gurdwaras. One, while studying the entire Khalistani movement, wonders that in the initial days, through the late 70s and the 80s, and perhaps the early 90s as well, where did the Khalistani movement really get the support from? I say that there were 2 major elements where the support came in. Both, resources, money, as well as the weapons and the ammunition. One, of course, was our neighbor Pakistan, who wanted, continuous upsurge in violence, wanted mayhem on the streets of Punjab. And the second, and the most crucial, was the Sikh community themselves, but mainly the international diaspora. Punjab was completely tense and seething with anger, and things finally came to a boil in 1984. Bhindranwale decided to take shelter and cover of the most holy Sikh shrine, Sri Harmandir Sahib Golden Temple in Amritsar of Punjab. He also took with him all his men as well as ammunition, be it missiles, small rockets, as well as guns and pistols as well. So that was the trigger point when Indira Gandhi, initially through the Punjab police, and then finally gave the charge to the Indian Army to in fact launch an attack inside the premises of Golden Temple. The siege ended with the final killing of Bhindranwale. The Sikh community was seething with anger and nobody knew what will happen. But it happened. It happened when Indira Gandhi chose that she had 2 Sikh, bodyguards, and even though she was given intelligence through the RNAW and the Intelligence Bureau that there could be an attack, and that happened. Indira Gandhi's residence, she was there, and finally these 2 Sikh bodyguards decided to kill her. That was, in fact, one of the biggest attacks on Indian democracy, one of the biggest attacks on an Indian Prime Minister. And finally, we saw what happened after Indira Gandhi's killing.
Pakistan opened its borders for them, opened its weapon stores for them. After the collapse of the Soviet Union, they diverted a very large proportion of the weapons they had received from America or through American funding from other countries. Of course, they provided safe haven and training facilities throughout the move across the border, as they do with the Kashmiris now. So there was this continuous facilitation of cross-border movement, both of personnel and weapons, and of other resources were required. And that was the reality. Till the fight back began. And the fight back began with KPS Gill, effectively. KPS Gill was brought in after Blue Star in '84. He is the one who set up the entire intelligence apparatus, the entire apparatus of documentation of the terrorists, detailing the detailed FIRs, then the extraction from FIRs of various identities, the development of a information base on various groups and gangs. And then you have a complete decimation of the terrorist leadership. It was a very targeted operation. KPS Gill drew up lists where you had A category, B category, and C category terrorists. And then you had others. And you got no benefit by going around killing others and C categories or B category terrorists. You got reward for the A category. So it was very targeted, killing or arrest. It was targeted against the top leadership. And that's what defeated them. That is when they found that they had to, many of them crossed the border and went and hid in Pakistan and tried to orchestrate operations from there.
Any ideology all across the globe does not die completely. Even though the Indian police and the security forces tried their best to crush the Khalistan movement completely in the 80s, it revived again. And it revived because of multiple reasons. One, of course, was the international diaspora. And they kept this alive because they had this wound that they couldn't forget 1984. But the major turning point was Pakistan and Pakistan's K2 strategy. It wanted to keep violence boiling. One K was Kashmir and the other K was Khalistan, referred to Punjab.
They started bringing the leadership back into Pakistan so that they could continue to at least coordinate the movement and coordinate operations with lower cadres on the other side of the border. And many of them continue to be housed in Pakistan, along with several cadres. Others went to various Western countries, very prominently Canada, the UK, USA, Germany, but also in other lesser countries in Europe, in Southeast Asia. Western countries were extremely welcoming at that time. There was this whole idea that this is not a terrorist movement, it's a freedom struggle and all that sort of nonsense. They're paying the price for it now.
Well, in fact, in the studios, we have Deepak Banana over here. And Deepak, I was just going through it. There's a history to this movement. There is a history by which it went to the diaspora. This movement is more of a diaspora movement, isn't it? They are citizens of a country and then they espouse Khalistan.
See, there's a phenomena. If you look at a lot of first generation immigrants that go to say the West, the memories that they retain of their culture and of their homeland are the memories of, say, India or whatever country they come from, from a very specific era. Now, these people are unaware of the changes that have been wrought in India and Indian culture. You'll find a lot of them are extremely conservative, much more conservative than people you'd find, say, in the villages of Punjab. Because the culture, and being in a foreign country, they tend to stick to those ideas in a way so as to preserve their own identities. So what ends up happening is that the diaspora ends up becoming much more conservative, and also they're much more susceptible to propaganda, which may come from multiple channels. So the fact is that a large number of these people have never really visited Punjab. And that is especially true for people, say, in Canada. Not every one of them is coming here. And their fears, their suspicions are only heightened by the different and often misleading sources of information that come. And with the internet, there is a tendency for more sensationalist ideas and news points, which are spread further on social media. So what you end up seeing is, a cascading set of events, and you see a sense of alarm. And therefore, you see a number of these people who are talking about a genocide in Punjab, who are talking about a jingoistic Indian war in Punjab, which is the farthest thing from the truth.
All right. Okay, let us in fact take a look at the second part of that series, a documentary which has been put in place. Now, what it says is that even as the Khalistani insurgency was crushed, embers of the radical movement remained. Now an even more virulent strain of the ideology threatens to set Punjab ablaze. How did the Khalistani movement survive? Is Punjab doomed to repeat history? Well, take a look at this documentary on News9 Plus, and we show you right here.
Previously on Khalistan Reborn.
This year has been a record year in terms of gangland killings in Canada. There is a growing degree of concern within Canadian law enforcement that these transnational gangs are in the future going to cause problems in Canada.
To me, what the current round of violence tells us is that it was always this way. It was always this way that the Khalistan movement, just as Canada is too close and too tolerant to the Khalistan movement, the Khalistanis themselves have been too close to organized crime.
They're loud, they make a lot of noise, but who are they?
We are going to destroy Tiranga!
Stop only when Punjab is liberated.
It is touching the point where terrorism begins.
Nobody knows who is behind these killings.
It is a very big wound which will leave its mark.
Indian missions and consulates across the US, the UK, Canada and Australia have recently been attacked by pro-Khalistan radicals. In London, tensions escalated when protesters removed the Indian tricolour at the Indian High Commission. The Indian consulate in San Francisco witnessed an arson attempt. In Canada, posters with threats against the Indian diplomats were circulated prior to the pro-Khalistan rallies. Security has recently been enhanced at the residence of India's High Commissioner to Ottawa after online threats.
I think San Francisco case is being investigated. They will find out as to who was it. And this person who took out the flag, I think he was the one who recently died of cancer also. How can you allow India's flag being taken down? Police must have been there, the so-called Scotland Yard people, just watching helplessly. I can't imagine this thing happening in India. I don't think any Indian government will allow such a thing to happen. How can they allow all these things, anti-India thing, and aiming ambassadors, high commissioners, consul general being targeted and photographs being shown? This is not possible. This should not be accepted. I think our authorities have protested at a very high level. The High Commissioner of Canada has been called and he has been told as to this type of things will not be tolerated.
Our sense is that these posters inciting violence against our diplomats and our diplomatic premises abroad are unacceptable. We have called on the Government of Canada to take all steps to ensure the safety of our diplomats. It is a matter of concern that freedom of expression and speech is once again being misused by anti-India elements based in Canada and elsewhere.
It's clear. There can be no scope ever for Khalistan. There can be no space for Khalistan. Let's be very clear on this. We can talk about anything else, but a separate state.
It doesn't matter to them at all. They are serving a purpose. I do not know who their masters are. Maybe ISI or local politicians. Large majority, only few days I told you, I've been in touch with people. They say, sir, they're not even 1% of the population. 50 people coming there showing the flags. That doesn't make a crowd. Whenever the picture is there, quite a few Pakistanis and Kashmiris are mixed up with them also at that time, just to swell their number. Because outside, you can't say everybody doesn't have a turban. A clean-shaven man will also be a Sikh, can be a Sikh, or a Muslim, whatever it is.
Yes, they are loud, they make a lot of noise, but who are they? That they're young guys who, when they go there, they need money to sustain. And since a lot of money being spent for going abroad, so they're virtually broke, and then they need a lot of money to sustain themselves. And there are agencies like ISI who give them some sort of allowances, monthly allowances, and sustain them. And when required, they use them for their objectives. This is the scene of the Khalistan. This is the on-ground factual reality of the Khalistan, or the people who protest for Khalistan there.
ISI is behind all these things. And ISI, I have written in my book also, their investment in this is very slow, very very low. If the risk-reward ratio is much in their favor, they will continue doing all these things. Pakistan is going to take advantage everywhere, there is no doubt about it. It's a very small amount they have to spend on all these things.
It's a well-known fact that Pakistan is supporting and funding them for a long time. But don't discount what I said before, that now they are raising local funding as well. They have local support as well. So they don't depend upon total Pakistani funding now. They can raise a lot of funds themselves.
Meanwhile, several pro-Khalistan terrorists in the US, UK, Canada, Australia, as well as Pakistan are running for cover after deaths of prominent separatists under suspicious circumstances. While the Khalistanis blame Indian agencies, the deaths continue to be shrouded in mystery. Hardeep Singh Nijjar, Paramjit Singh Panchwar, Avtar Singh Khanda and Harmeet Singh are among those who have died abroad. What caused their mysterious deaths? Blaming India for the deaths of pro-Khalistan leaders, Gurpatwant Singh Pannu, chief of pro-Khalistan group Sikhs for Justice, which has been banned by the Indian government, announced a reward of $125,000 to anyone who gives information about the foreign visits of Union Home Minister Amit Shah, External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar, and Indian High Commissioner to Canada, Sanjay Kumar Verma.
We will respond, and India.
Based in New York, Pannu is infamous for advocating a separate state for Sikhs in Punjab through anti-India aggressive videos in which he provokes violence. In the year 2022, Interpol rejected India's request for a red corner notice against Pannu due to insufficient information.
Well, Pannu is in hiding at the moment. What type of a Khalistani leader is he? He is afraid of his life. He must come out openly and say whatever he wants to say in a constitutional manner.
He's creating a movement. He's creating kind of support within the Sikh community. He's creating divide among Hindus and Sikhs overseas, and he hopes that this will take place in Punjab also. So it's a kind of incremental approach. it is not going to create Khalistan, but it is going to create a lot of trouble, which it is creating.
India, we are going to respond bullet with bullet and bullet with bomb.
Whenever he speaks, he spews venom. I mean, I have never seen him speaking with some logic or some reasonability or discussing or doing some debate with reasonability.
In 2001, Dr. Jagjit Singh Chauhan, considered to be the main ideologue and brain behind the Khalistan movement, met former Prime Minister Chandrasekhar and swore by the unity and integrity of the country. Unlike Chauhan, today's flag bearers of the Khalistan so-called cause are attacking India's integrity and sovereignty.
Jagjit Singh Chauhan, the man who started Khalistan as a subject, he came to India and here is his picture. Jagjit Singh Chauhan with the RSS chief then. And he came and said, Khalsa Raj is same as Ram Raj. This is Jagjit Singh Chauhan, the person who started the movement of Khalistan. So my question to all these Khalistanis is that if your father or grandfather or the person who started the movement of Khalistan, if he has the idea of Ram Raj, then what are you pushing? What are you trying to do?
While the mystery behind the killing of several Khalistani terrorists remains unresolved, the propaganda by Pakistan-backed Khalistani outfits continues in several countries, including Canada and UK. Even as the new wave of Khalistani propaganda is far from over, Indian agencies have tightened noose against Khalistani overground workers in India involved with their handlers abroad to attack the country. 31 places across India have been raided by the NIA, and the hunt for the Khalistani terrorists continues, even as they run for cover.
Of course, it just shows how much of it is there in the diaspora, that is being fashioned by certain leaders, certain aspects of it. As your documentary was speaking about all that, it talks about the fears that have been instilled in the diaspora. And diaspora, of course, they are a successful diaspora. The Sikhs are a successful diaspora, but how much of it has some kind of resonance back at home is a big question, isn't it?
Now, in my travels across Punjab, while I've come across a great deal of social anxiety, and on multiple fronts, with regard to the drug problem in Punjab, with regard to the failing economy of the state, with regard to a lack of interest on part of the younger generation in following the traditional Sikhi life. Young boys don't want to carry the pug largely. They are more interested in becoming AP Dillon, right, than, keeping the pug and the 5Ks. So there are a lot of social anxieties, but nowhere do you see an outright demand for Khalistan. Yes, you go to the Gurudwaras, you'll find the odd poster for Bhindranwale. You'll find, similar, you'll find kadas with AK-47s emblazoned on them. But you'll never find a single individual, who goes and demands Khalistan. If anything, Punjab has been the sword arm of India. It is the model minority. In fact, even the word Sardar is accompanied invariably by G in India. So Punjab, insofar as the people are concerned, yes, it's gone through some very troubling times, but you don't find that dissatisfaction, articulated in a way that would be secessionist.
Okay.
Right.
So that is the aspect of it. And let's go to the final part of that series that was there. This new wave of Khalistani propaganda that is gaining momentum. We have seen how the situation has been unfolding, especially when it came to our ties with Canada as well, and how it has an impact on Punjab. Let's take a look at that final documentary on how the situation is actually there on the ground in Punjab, and also how the diaspora reacts to that.
On 20th March 2023, a mob of Khalistan supporters vandalized the Indian High Commission in London. A day later, the Indian consulate in San Francisco was attacked. Another plan to incite violence at the Indian embassy in Washington, D.C. was foiled by the secret services. The attacks exposed the resurgence of the Khalistan movement.
The last time we saw that,
was in the 1980s, and that led to the worst ever incident of terrorism in Canadian history.
Hi, my name's Terry Malewski, and I was one of the reporters that was sent in 1985 to cover the bombing of Air India Flight 182. And I've been covering that story in many ways ever since for 37 years, and wrote a book about the Khalistan movement called Blood for Blood. And I'm still talking about it. It won't go away.
My name is Anil Bhattacharya. You know, I've seen it evolve and grow in strength, which really didn't exist on the ground about 10 years back.
No war! Save Punjab! No war! Save Punjab! Mulk bande nahi, South Sudan baniya.
Over the years, for the Sikh community that is in Punjab, India, Canada has become a second home. And in the last 3 to 4 decades, their population has significantly increased. And this has led to a massive demographic change and a change in perception and narrative in support of the Khalistani elements from the political leadership of Canada. Be it the ruling government or the opposition, they tend to have a separatist tendency as well, a support system for the Khalistani radical propaganda.
This year has been a record year in terms of gangland killings in Canada. Some of that is definitely attributable to gangs operating, Indo-Canadian gangs operating, who would have links to a degree with the Khalistan movement. There is a growing degree of concern within Canadian law enforcement that these transnational gangs are in the future going to cause problems in Canada.
There's no question that the problem of the Khalistani movement and its relationship with organized crime that's where the rubber hits the road. To me, what the current round of violence tells us is that it was always this way. It was always this way that the Khalistan movement, just as Canada is too close and too tolerant to the Khalistan movement, the Khalistanis themselves have been too close to organized crime. We are not paying attention, close enough attention to the intersection of the Khalistan movement and organized crime.
They are immune from Indian law. They know that they cannot be extradited, even if extradition proceedings start against them. That process can take up to a decade. What both Indian and Canadian officials are really concerned about is the sort of growing nexus between the Khalistani groups and these gang members, and what it's going to lead to. The last time we saw that was in the 1980s, at the height of the Khalistan movement in India. And that led to the worst ever incident of terrorism in Canadian history, which was the bombing of the Air India flight Khalistani. Now, in terms of support from state actors, I mean, we are very aware that Pakistan, through its High Commission and through its consulates in Canada, does tend to play a significant role in the organization of the Khalistani groups there, including funding. There was a Consul General of Pakistan in Toronto who was actually asked by the Canadian government to leave the country because he was playing a role in fomenting both Islamist terrorism as well as Khalistani groups in the area. Now, in terms of where we are with the Khalistan movement in Canada,
the Indian government have issued a notice to the more than 3.5 million Sikh community that they should leave their homes and move back from the border villages.
Sikhs for Justice, of course, is headquartered out of New York, but it does have a fairly significant following in Canada, including Hardeep Nijjar, who's based in Vancouver, in Surrey, British Columbia. Then you have other groups like Shiromani Akali Dal, Amritsar, which is Simranjeet Singh Man's group, which has a role to play there as well. They are overtly pro-Khalistan. They don't hide it. They don't make any bones about it. Sikhs for Justice campaign for the referendum was gaining traction in Canada.
People are free to vote, and this is a plain vanilla type of separatism. They're not asking for a vote on an armed insurgency, but just for the principle of an independent state called Khalistan.
So they have, I think, another 4 or 5 more votes over a period of time, which will be held in other Canadian cities. You'll have them in Vancouver, you'll have in Calgary, Montreal, Ottawa, etc.
What's going to result from that? It could be the end of the road, because what may result from that is a pitifully low level of support. Remember that the Khalistan movement has never been about democracy. Nobody elected the Baba Khalsa. Nobody elected Talvinder Parmar to go out and blow up a civilian airliner and try to blow up 2 of them. This was never about the popular will.
K2 is a term that has been coined by the Pakistani ISI. So the K2 basically means Kashmir and Khalistan. So on these two ends, Pakistan continuously wants to instigate violence. It wanted to, in fact, initiate the Khalistani propaganda, revive Khalistan somehow. Just the way we've seen terrorism in Kashmir, they wanted homegrown terror in Punjab, where Sikh community is pitted against the Hindus and others in India, and there's continuous violence.
There's no question that it's a real project. Their plan was to make things hurt, make things bleed in India, make India bleed and feel the pain that Pakistan felt in 1971. I've mentioned a couple of times Talvinder Parmar, the Air India bomber. When he died in October of 1992 in a hail of gunfire in the village of Kang Arayan, he was not alone. He was in a heavily armed group of 6 men, of which he was only one, and 2 of the others were ISI agents, whose identities were confirmed, by the way, by the Pakistani government at the time. They were very well equipped, and it was very revealing that in death, Talvinder Parmar, the Air India bomber, was accompanied by 2 Pakistani agents.
Well, security situation in Punjab is worsening. It is at the stage, at a brink, where if there isn't any action or a cohesive strategy by the Punjab government, it would go out of hands. We have seen the Pakistan ISI directly recruiting gangsters in Punjab as well as part of this K2 strategy. We've seen for years together drug trafficking being used by Pakistan to fund terror in Punjab. There have been, these lone wolf attacks that have happened. There have been small-scale bomb blasts that have happened in the Ludhiana court premises. We've seen RPG attacks on the intelligence headquarters of the Punjab police as well, and similar such actions.
Understand the political vacuum in Punjab today. No traditional party, which is essentially the Akalis and the Congress, has now any space after the last election. You have a complete novice, the Aam Aadmi Party, which has no roots in the communities. It has ridden a wave, essentially, surfed over a wave of anti-Congress and anti-Akali sentiment. But it has no roots down there. These people, who are essentially outsiders to the political process, have no understanding also of administration.
We see indecisiveness by the local government, the Bhagwant Mann-led Aam Aadmi Party government in Punjab, because they came to power on a plank of change. They wanted to change the governance system, end corruption, target drug trafficking, and also Khalistani elements. But in the last 1 year, we haven't seen any kind of a decisive action which sets a precedent in Punjab. We've seen, in fact, the government surrendering to the diktats of the Khalistani elements.
So agriculture has become extremely unprofitable. Industry hasn't grown. Governments have stagnated. Today, the crisis of governance in Punjab is such that many a month they have difficulty even paying their salaries to government servants. On top of that, you have significant crises. You have an estimated, I think, 20 million unemployed youth in Punjab. You have an environment and an atmosphere of corruption and mistrust. The youth is looking for outlets. Whether
जब देश आजाद हुआ तब भी कई प्रदेशों की साधारण परिवारों की महिलाओं ने कहा कि हमारा संवैधानिक अधिकार आरक्षित करें, लेकिन तब साधारण परिवारों की वो महिलाएं जिन्होंने राष्ट्र को आजाद करने में अपनी भूमिका निभाई, जो दूरदर्शी थी, जानती थी कि साधारण वंचित समाजों की महिलाओं को अगर मौका अनोखे ढंग से संविधान की मर्यादा में ना दिया गया तो शायद आगामी वर्षों में महिलाओं के लिए चुनौती बन जाएगा। आज मैं उन महिलाओं की दूरदर्शी सोच को वंदन करती हूं। महोदय, 1971 में तब की सरकार में एक कमेटी का गठन हुआ on the status of women in India। और आज मैं विशेष रूप से आपका ध्यान आकृष्ट करती हूं 1974 में जब कमेटी ने अपनी रिपोर्ट को साझा किया तो उसके 7वें चैप्टर में पॉलिटिकल स्टेटस के वर्णन में यह इंगित है कि तब भारतीय जनसंघ ने कहा था कि महिलाओं को कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनली गारंटी कीजिए। दे वर द एडवोकेट्स फॉर विमेन्स रिजर्वेशन। आज जनसंघ के उन नेताओं को, उन चिंतकों को मैं आभार व्यक्त करती हूं। ये मेरा सौभाग्य है कि मैं भारतीय जनता पार्टी की एक साधारण कार्यकर्ता हूं, जिसको मेरे संगठन ने असाधारण मौके दिए ताकि मैं संगठन के माध्यम से संविधान की मर्यादा में अपने राष्ट्र की, समाज की सेवा कर सकूं। यह भाजपा के कार्यकर्ताओं का गौरव है कि इस राष्ट्र में अपने संगठन में पहली बार महिलाओं को आरक्षण देने वाली राजनीतिक पार्टी भारतीय जनता पार्टी बनी। यह भी कहना सत्य होगा कि व्यवस्थाओं को किस दृष्टि से संगठन में सम्मिलित करना, इसके लिए साल 2007 में नेशनल एग्जीक्यूटिव की मीटिंग के अंतर्गत तब के हमारे राष्ट्रीय अध्यक्ष और अब के हमारी कैबिनेट के वरिष्ठ नेता श्री राजनाथ सिंह जी ने एक कमेटी का गठन किया। ये सौभाग्य है मेरा कि उस कमेटी में आज 2 सदस्य वर्तमान इस सदन में उपस्थित हैं। आज उस कमेटी जिसकी अध्यक्षता श्रद्धेय सुषमा स्वराज जी ने की, आज उस कमेटी की एक और सदस्य जिनका देहांत हो चुका है, किरण महेश्वरी जी, और जो संगठन में आध्यात्म की दृष्टि से मेरे मार्गदर्शक रहे, ऐसे श्रद्धेय बाल आपटे जी हमारे बीच नहीं हैं। मैं उनके योगदान के लिए उनको नमन करती हूं। ये भी उचित होगा अध्यक्ष जी कहना कि उस कमेटी में नजमा हिप्तुल्ला जी थी, उनका आभार वंदन करती हूं। सुमित्रा महाजन जी थी, जिन्होंने बार बार लगातार अपनी पुण्य भूमि से इंदौर से चुनाव जीतकर हम सबका गौरव बढ़ाया। उन्होंने स्पीकर की भूमिका में महिलाओं का राष्ट्र भर में गौरव बढ़ाया। मैं ताई की अनुपस्थिति में ताई को प्रणाम करती हूं। और कमेटी में 2 और महानुभाव थे जो विद्यमान है वर्तमान के सदन में, जिन्होंने महिला आरक्षण भाजपा के संगठन में कैसा हो उसको सुनिश्चित किया, जो आज मोदी सरकार के मंत्री हैं, आदरणीय किशन रेड्डी जी और किरण रिजिजू जी। मैं आपको भी आभार व्यक्त करती हूं। महोदय, they say success has many fathers and failure has none। और इसीलिए कल जब ये प्रस्ताव सदन में आया तो कुछ लोगों ने कहा हमारा बिल है, कुछ लोगों ने कहा हमने चिट्ठी लिखी, कुछ लोगों ने कहा कि ये पूरा का पूरा संवैधानिक निर्माण हमारा था। आज ऐसी एक सम्मानित नेत्री ने सदन में अपना वक्तव्य रखा, लेकिन उनका मैं एक विशेष रूप से आभार व्यक्त करती हूं कि 2 विषयों पर उन्होंने ऑन रिकॉर्ड स्पष्टीकरण दिया है। हमको बार बार बतलाया जाता कि एक विशेष परिवार ने 73rd 74th अमेंडमेंट टू द कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन पारित करवाया। आज मैं आभार वंदन करती हूं कि पहली बार स्पष्टता हुई इस सदन में उनके द्वारा कि ये पुण्य काम पीवी नरसिम्हा राव जी ने किया, जिनके मरणोपरांत उनके ही पार्टी के हेडक्वार्टर में उनको नमन करने का मौका नहीं दिया गया। दूसरा, ये कथन कि अभी क्यों नहीं और ये वक्त हमारा बिल है तो अभी करिए। तो महोदय, ये उस बिल की प्रति है जिनको वो हमारा कहते हैं। उसमें अगर आप दूसरे पृष्ठ पे 2B और 3B पढ़ें, और ये वो है जो कांग्रेस पार्टी कहती है यूपीए की सरकार में राज्यसभा में पारित हुआ और फिर लोकसभा में प्रस्तुत हुआ। अगर आप इस पृष्ठ पर ये दोनों छंद पढ़ें तो यूपीए, जिसकी अध्यक्षा श्रीमती सोनिया गांधी हैं, उन्होंने कहा है नो सीट शैल बी रिजर्व्ड फॉर विमेन बिलोंगिंग टू शेड्यूल्ड कास्ट, शेड्यूल्ड ट्राइब्स इन द 3rd जनरल इलेक्शंस। 3B पढ़ें तो उन्होंने कहा, प्रस्ताव दिया, नो सीट शैल बी रिजर्व्ड फॉर विमेन इन द 3rd जनरल इलेक्शन। अर्थात आज की सरकार जब यह अधिनियम लागू होगा तब के बाद 15 वर्षों तक महिलाओं को रिजर्वेशन गारंटी करती है, मोदी की गारंटी है। लेकिन अगर कांग्रेस पार्टी का प्रस्ताव आप पढ़ें तो उनका प्रस्ताव ये था 2B और 3B में कि नो सीट शैल बी रिजर्व्ड for women and SC/STs in the 3rd general election, no seat shall be reserved for women in the 3rd general election। कांग्रेस का प्रस्ताव था कि 10 साल औरतें मेहनत करें, लेकिन 15वें साल में आपका अधिकार आपसे छीना जाएगा। आज मैं अभिनंदन करती हूं प्रधानमंत्री जी का, हमारे न्याय मंत्री का, जिन्होंने कांग्रेस की इस अभिलाषा को निराश किया। फिर इनका ये वक्तव्य कि आप अभी क्यों नहीं कराते। महोदय, हम जानते हैं कि संविधान को छिन्न भिन्न करना ये कांग्रेस की पुरानी आदत है, लेकिन आज अगर आप इसी गरिमामय संविधान के अनुच्छेद 82 को पढ़ें, 82 ये किताब नहीं है, संविधान का मेरे हाथों में, तो आपके लिए किताब होगी, हमारे लिए पूजनीय है, संविधान है ये। आर्टिकल 82 और आपकी अनुमति से